Hey, are you motivated? Let's talk about that today. We got a great guest, top salesperson, now turned sales trainer, but still very much a rep. Only been training about a year, but has a great way to build up an unstoppable mindset, which is critical because if you know your product, great. You got to know it. You got to be able to connect and engage with another person. And you got to have enthusiasm and internal motivation, your internal motor to keep moving. And we keep looking outside of ourselves for that. So today we're going to be talking about it. Before we get into it, could I ask you a little favor? Just a little one. When you're on LinkedIn and you see my stuff fly by, give it a little like, a little comment, a little share. I'd appreciate that. Much more than I appreciate an in-mail. Yeah, in-mails become a little overwhelming, but I never get sick of those likes, those comments, those shares. And tell a friend. Do you know a friend who could use some help in sales? Listen to the podcast. Also, have you checked out the other podcast? Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers, the Sales Leadership Show. Great podcast there. And the B2B Revenue Show. Let's get into the interview. And if you're in the courses already, please keep up with the one-on-ones in the office hours. There's nothing but gold in there. Just got off a one-on-one right now. And there has been like 5 examples in office hours that would have really helped this person out. And when you hear other people solve the problem, there's nothing better. To hear the enthusiasm of filling up their calendar with meetings, with closing the big deals. Enough already. Let's get into the interview.
It's great to see you in the face. I followed so much of your stuff.
Hey, Michael, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Brian. Firstly, I'm absolutely delighted to be here. My name is Michael Cheetham, and I love selling. I love the art of selling. I love the psychology of selling. I love everything about it. And my journey in selling essentially started when I was 14 years old. That's what sort of lit the flame and lit the spark, if you like. And then over the last 25 plus years, I've been in the med tech space, medical devices. Specifically in the last 15 years, I've been selling in orthopedics, where you're selling hip and knee implants essentially to orthopedic surgeons. And then most recently, in the last 12 months, I've set up my own sales training business called Tenacity, where we inspire people to sell and be proud to be salespeople.
And why medical sales? What you like about the union of those two things?
To be honest, it was a natural transition. We're from a medical family. My mum's a midwife. My sister's a surgeon in the States, ironically. She's a surgeon in New York. And my dad was a sales director for a steel company. So I was literally the perfect blend
of the
two of them.
Yeah. And what do you like about sales? You seem passionate about it, but I don't know why.
I love the interaction with people. I love the fact that it's trying to find out exactly what makes people tick. What is the real problem that they're trying to solve? One thing that stuck with me very early on is that sales is trying to provide a solution to a problem. I love competition. I've been into sports from a very young age, swimming, running, triathlon, golf. And I love the medical arena. So to me, it's a perfect combination of all those 3 things.
And why didn't you become a doctor? Was it that?
That's a great question. That's a very sort of niggly question because originally I looked down that route. And I went to university and I studied anatomy and physiology with that exact view of becoming a doctor. And then after 3 years, I was, and during the summer holidays, I had a spell where I sold suits, I sold menswear in a retail shop. So I sold the suits, and that's where I learned to sell all the added extras as well, the cufflinks, the ties, the shoes, the whole package. And it was that gave me that sort of glimpse inside selling, made me thought, yes, this is the path I want to follow.
And what's medical sales like? Who do you sell to? What do they care about?
So medical sales, it encompasses many different people
Yeah.
within healthcare. Surgeons, primarily, theatre managers, nurses, scrub teams, CEOs, CFOs, sales directors, porters, procurement, everything. And each of these people have got different needs. And it's trying to find out which is the key driver and what's the main end result that they're trying to achieve. So we sell to the whole spectrum. And sometimes the procurement needs, they're focused on price, efficiency, cuts, that kind of thing. And the surgeons are thinking, well, patients' outcomes. And a scrub nurse, she just wants the theatre to run well and smoothly. And for her team, or his team, if you like, to be the best they possibly can.
So it's a pretty complex sale then, huh?
It is. It is.
What made you good at it?
Persistence,
Yeah.
resilience. I treated every operation as if my life depended on it, because I know for the customers, it does.
It does, yeah.
I was invested in them. I really didn't. I wish I could have been in the consult with the doctor before the operation, whereas we only used to get to see the exact case itself, so we wouldn't see any pre or post follow-up. I was always fascinated to see the x-rays afterwards, and the fact that someone would come in not being able to walk, they'd come in a wheelchair, and then after having a total knee or a total hip fitted, the following day they would be upstanding or even looking to walk downstairs. And that to me was just, this is a game changer.
It is.
So
crazy.
I love that. I love the fact that you really do change people's lives.
Yeah. And why'd you leave?
Why? I felt like I'd achieved everything I possibly could in my 15 years. I worked for a American Fortune 500 medical devices company. I set myself a goal on day one to be the number one in that company. It took me many years to get there, but I finally achieved that. But also, throughout my career, people started asking, Michael, how do you stay motivated every year? How do you keep doing it? How do you keep bringing it? How do you keep hitting your target
Almost
every
16
year?
years, yeah.
Yeah. And during that period of time, I never missed a target. And then I started teaching a few other people's. And to me, sales success it's just a formula. It's not a coincidence. And if you follow the exact steps, so you build trust, rapport, you are genuinely interested in finding out what the real issue is, and then you learn to handle objections, what have you. To me, sales used to get a bad rap, this word sales. It used to be considered a dirty word. My father, as I mentioned, was a sales director. And I am delighted and really proud. And this is why I love what you do, Brian. The brutal truth. I want to inspire people to say, well, this is, you are the kings and queens of the organization. Because when you sell a product, this is where everyone's life starts to change.
Yeah. And people tend to look down on it or marginalize it. And it's just the opposite. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, let's get into that number one thing, because clearly that competitiveness is a motivator, because you wouldn't have cared about being number one if you didn't. Was it being number one? Was it making the most money? Was it proving that you were better or the best?
It's changed really throughout my career. So when I first started, it was, I wanted to be the very best I could possibly be. And I was very much driven by a leaderboard. I really did want to climb the leaderboard. And initially, I wanted to be in that top half. And then it was about the top 5 slots. And then, so that was a driver. I can't deny that. But to me, it was a measure of how much value I was bringing to my customers.
Yeah.
So this is the great thing about selling, is when you're selling, you're revalidating the fact that you're good at what you do. So, and unless you're making a difference, and I genuinely believe that the very best sales make a difference to the customer more than they do to the salesperson.
Right.
And I think that's critical. So when that is reflected in your results and your sales, that gives you revalidation that you're doing the right thing. And I've got to the point, so I've closed deals for like individual pieces of equipment worth £1 million, but also deals sort of in excess of $12 million. But to me, those wins are kind of short-lived now in that way. It's more like, how does that change? Seeing the look on the surgeon's face, or seeing the unity of the team pulling together, or seeing the fact that a hospital is working more efficiently. That is what I get more joy from now, rather than the money. Because I've achieved the money things and I've achieved the top things. It's more than that, you know, and that's what drives me now. And really seeing other salespeople start to see their own potential, and they go, I didn't think I could do that. And when they achieve that, it's really heartwarming.
And what do you see people in the medical space doing wrong?
The number one thing, that would be walking, talking product brochures. So people just, it's that vomit. Let me tell you how much I possibly can about this particular product. And it's a regurgitation of all of this information, and they drown the customer in it. And the customer just thinks, and they make an excuse to leave because it's not relevant to them.
At least they're polite.
They do. They say, I'm sorry, I've got clinic now. I've got to go.
Yeah.
And because you've wasted their time, it's not relevant. And they think, well, that was just a painful experience. But I see it every single day.
And is that their fault, or is it that managers teach them to do that?
I think it's something that's been endemic in medical sales and medical device sales, which is why we set up Tenacity. There's 90% focus on product knowledge. And I think specifically when you're selling a medical product, there's this, make sure everyone knows every possible thing from a safety point of view and a security point of view. But that is not the best way to serve the customer. No. Right. And I hear this a lot of the times, a hip's a hip, or a knee's a knee. You're all about the same, the top 5 companies or what have you. So they obviously want something more than that. And the number one thing with me is, I was always told there's 2 products. There's always 2 products, the definitive product and then you. And I see people selling the one product, the definitive product, completely, but with regurgitation of information. But they don't say how much they want it. They're not willing to show their hunger or their desire or their exceptional level of service or their desire to solve the problem. And to me, that's where you can sometimes be the biggest differentiator.
Because also it's a time-based product. They probably don't have a shelf full of knees and hips, or maybe they do. I don't know.
Well, they do.
Do they? Okay.
They do, yes. Most hospitals now have what we refer to as consignment on the shelf.
Okay.
It's tightened down a lot within the last 5 years, I would say. Originally, they would have a pick of anything they wanted. A rep could walk in, the surgeon go, I want that one, bring it in. And you could choose from one of 5 or 8 products. Whereas now I'd say there's 1 or 2 choices because of margins and procurement, and it's more financially driven now.
And I think people have overlooked that human element. And I hear a lot of so-called experts saying that doesn't matter if you bring enough value. But wait a second, you are the value. You know, if somebody is in the emergency room, you're right. They don't care which doctor comes out and fixes them. But if something hurts, something's bothering them, they don't know what to do about it, they do care about that rapport. And in the same way with salespeople, that doctor, you know, does it matter which knee they buy? Probably. But who are they going to explore that with? Someone they enjoy talking to, or somebody who's annoying the hell out of them?
Yes.
And I get certainly because I talk to some medical reps, and a lot of them get overwhelmed because they're talking to super educated, bright people.
Yes.
But you're never going to get to their level of
Hmm.
expertise about the human body.
Brian is spot on with that. And that's the mistake I made
Yes.
in the first 12 months. I tried to talk their technical language, and then you're trying to get up to a place that you never will because they've
You never
spent
will.
10, 15 years. They may be a professor in their topic. And
Right.
then you feel, but you need to lean in to your true qualities, whether that's honesty, whether that's integrity, whether that's,
We're
humor
coming
or
up with some great
cheekiness.
questions.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because
To me, I talk about this phrase, positively disturbing.
tell me about
So,
that.
so to for someone to change their opinion, they have to look at it from a different viewpoint or a different perspective.
Yeah.
So if you're the person going in there asking the same old, tired, boring, repetitive questions that everyone else does, how many hips do you do? How many knees do you do? Do you see this? The surgeon's going, oh.
Right.
And you've got to mix it up, and you say, like, look, if you were going to design this implant, if you were going to design it and it was yours, what would be the one thing that you change about it? What are you trying to achieve with each case, and why do you want to do that? And do you think you can get any better? And then they think, right, okay, so it's getting into their psyche, but from a really genuine, interested point of view. You might mention something, they go, and you go, well, what's your real concern?
Right. Curiosity questions.
Exactly.
Right. Because
Exactly.
every if physiology, not psychology, but every human being's core desire is to be understood. And doctors probably don't get to be understood. They like have to kind of, well, either replace the knee or it's not going to work. Wheelchair or replacement, those are your options.
Yes. Yes. I also think it's important that, particularly, so I'm talking to you from across the pond in the UK, and the way we have the National Health Service, which is the public sector side of things, and then the private hospitals. Now, surgeons, they can do a full day's operating and in the NHS, and then they go to the private sector, and their list is overrun. They're tired. They don't start till 7 o'clock. Now why else are they there? They're there to make money, essentially,
Right.
as well as provide a service to patients. But they're there to improve their quality of life, their family's life. And the means to doing that is providing exceptional service to their patients. So you think, well, what do they want to achieve? What does success look like to them?
Yeah.
And I think when you really tap into that and you really want to know, and they go, wow, people have just come in and told me, how many hips do you do? And they find that refreshing because it's not an everyday conversation. And so because you ask different questions, by the very nature of it, you stand out and you're different.
Right. And you can probably tell by the age of the doctor what they care about.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Are they worried about retirement? Are they trying to build their practice? Are they looking for you being a resource for them? Because
Yes.
you have a very interesting vantage point that they don't have. You talk to a lot more doctors than they probably even talk to.
Right.
They
Yes.
might be looking for a job, they might be looking for a better hospital, gossip, whatever it is that lights
Yes.
them up.
Yeah. Some people want to be podium speakers.
Yeah.
Some people are interested in research. But then one of the surgeons the other day says, the reason I operate is I have 3 children that I want to put through private school. And that costs so much money a year. And I've got 2 going through now. Now I can't tell the third one. So he says, and that's why I need to do so many patients a month. So they're running a business ultimately as well. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes we forget that.
We look at the world through, we've got the better product. Let me tell you why.
Yes. And
And
that's absolutely the wrong place to start.
right. You need to know, but you don't lead with that.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And I think too many people, they spent all their time and training on that,
Mm-hmm.
and that they haven't really developed that outward mindset of showing curiosity and interest in the other person. And how
Mm-hmm.
can I add value independent of the product I sell?
Yes.
You know, how,
Yes. I think people default to product because that's a safe ground for them. And they feel like you say, I know more than this than my customer. So I'll go there because I feel like I'm not exposed and they're not going to throw a question at me that I can't answer. Whereas to me, it's always digging 2 levels deeper than that surface. When they say it's that, it's not normally that, it's normally something else.
it's
And it's just
normally the third kid getting into school,
exactly.
right?
Yes.
And that won't come up in the first conversation. That'll take a while. Well,
And
tell
that's
me,
why you need trust.
right? Because who's going to share that if you
Yes.
don't trust the other person? They don't want
Yeah.
you walking around London telling everybody about his 3 kids. They want you showing how you're going to get that third kid into the private school and not have to sit in line in public school.
Yes. Yes.
That's what they care about. And that's
Yes.
what they want to
Absolutely.
talk about too.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's just the ego, the kudos. Some people just want the biggest private practice, just to say it's their representation of success to themselves, and they want to feel like they've made it in that way. So, it's different for everyone. It's different for everyone.
Yeah.
In whatever field of business we do, whether it's medicine or IT or what have you, it's emotional drivers.
And when reps come to you or companies come to you, what are they looking to get? Like real tactically?
Um, I think there's different challenges that we're facing currently because of this new environment that we're in. So currently, I think there is a big issue as far as motivation of sales forces.
Yeah.
A lot of salespeople are great when they're going out driving and hungry for the business, but when all of a sudden they're at home and having to sell remotely, or they can't access the hospitals or the surgeons like they used to do in the previous way, I think their confidence drops and they're lost. And it's like, what do I do? And then if you get lost, you get disengaged. So then you make less phone calls or you make less calls. And so then all of a sudden, a call that used to be easy is suddenly a challenge. So I think there's the motivation aspect, and most companies going and springboarding into 2021. They want a great start to 2021. They want to start with momentum. They want to get out the gates fast. And they want a great year off the back of what's been a pretty difficult and challenging year. But ultimately, people want sales, they want growth, they want market share, and they want happier customers.
And what did they see in the way, regardless of the current situation in general? What are they? Is it motivation? Is it skills? Is it practice? Is it
I think it's all three.
it's everything, I guess. But
To me, the psychology piece, I've never been taught that. In my 25 years in the medical healthcare arena, I've never, ever been taught about resilience, persistence, tenacity, mindset, drive. And it goes back to what we said earlier. 90% of all my training was product knowledge. Right. We've got this brand new knee. Look at this clinical data. Look at the survivorship. We're 0.25% better than this. And to me, it's mindset is the beginning of everything. You've got to have that, what I call Olympic winning psychology. So let's say, for example, you had the iPhone 25 and someone had given you 100 of them. If someone's going out selling that at a level of a 4 out of 10, going, here you are, look, they tell me there's a few extra features.
Bunch of pixels.
Yeah.
A75
have a look at it.
chip.
Yeah. Rather than go, look, I've got a game changer. This is going to make your life, it's going to push it into a different league. Now, there's 3 things I really want to tell you. about it. And I'm really excited to tell you. But before I do that, I want you to just hold it and just feel what it feels like.
Now, that mindset thing, certainly since I've been doing like the podcast, it keeps coming up. Because what I hear is a lot of people victimization.
Yes.
If I only was this or that,
Yes.
or less of this and more of that, where
yes.
Certainly in the medical reps, they all say the same thing. It's like, I wish I had an MD. And it's like, well, do you have 8 years? No. So let's come up with another strategy. Well, what do you see as that psychology? Is it the tenacity, or is it a list of things?
I think what you touched on there, the blame phenomenon, as far as my territory is too hard, or my manager's this, or I've got really difficult customers. I think that comes from initially a lack of correct planning. So people set out to hit a target. Now, that's the wrong thing to start with from the get-go, because if you're just trying to hit the target, all you need is some adversity, like coronavirus or a bed crisis or a surgeon becoming ill. Because you're focusing here, all of a sudden you've been dropped to here. You need to set your personal target to be 120% of what the company target is. So you've built some insurance in. So if there is a few difficulties that you face, you finish at, let's say, 110% of target instead of 120%. But if everything goes great and you get out the gates fast and you're connecting with people and you're doing things correctly, you'll have a great year. But by focusing just on hitting, I think you've already made a mistake. But going back to the psychology, it's I know it's a classic that's been overused, but watching Steve Jobs present from stage, and he would say, "This is my creation. It's beautiful. I've been desperate to bring this to you for 3 years," and that real joy, that real love for the product, that real belief in the product. So I think you need to fully embrace and believe what you're doing, but you need the hunger, you need the drive, you need the if you get rejected 15 times in a week, you think, well, that doesn't matter. I'm coming back 16, and I'll be coming back 17, 18, and I'm never ever going to quit. I think you need that.
That's not knowing, right? That has to be developed. Right? Because if you tell somebody, if you run 10 miles, you're going to be nice and thin, or you do 1,000 sit-ups, you're going to have a six-pack. You know how to do a sit-up. They're not doing it, though.
Absolutely.
How do you get that to be part of them? Because, the thing I see on a lot of sales, they come from a performance background in high school, either debating, acting, music, sports, where they've had coaching, they've won and lost, they've had to compete for positions, they've been rejected. That took skills, right? There was probably some sad nights.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. At home when you didn't make the team, or and you have the people who blame it on the coach. Yeah, coach don't like me. Coach doesn't care about you.
That's probably the real answer.
Right? The coach doesn't know you from the other person. The other person did better. That's why you didn't get it. How do you recommend people building that? Because you can be aware of it. Everyone knows who Steve Jobs is. Everybody can watch on YouTube the presentations.
I think it's to know what your own emotional triggers are.
Oh.
So everyone's got a range, and everyone knows when they're at a 2, and everyone knows when they're at a 9. Now, it's what do you need to, how would you feel if you were feeling invincible? How would you feel, and how would you walk into that hospital if you were certain there was a deal on the table, if you were certain that you could close, if you're certain that they were going to sign today? So it's how would you feel? What would you have to be thinking? So it's the physical, it's the mental, and then tactically, what would you need to do? So I get people to say, well, what's my outcome? by the time I come out of this call or by the time I come out of this meeting, what would I need to have achieved? Because I see so many people, they might go in with the enthusiasm, the passion might be upbeat, but then they come out and they go, damn, I forgot to ask that question. So you need to be clear.
Like one little rejection or objection.
Yes.
We're not ready. Come back in a year. We're using Mike's knee pads or knee replacements right now.
So to me, just to sort of expand on that point, I watch these short motivational clips on something called the motivation grid. There's things like courage and resilience and be phenomenal and that kind of thing. But then for some people, it's a piece of music. Some people, it might be reading an Invictus poem or Rudyard Kipling's If. And so it's what is it also? For some people, it's simply looking at a picture of their family going, I'm going to go in and close this deal to give them the best possible service, but also to enrich our family's life. So what is it that makes you go,
the why?
Yes, yeah. I want
this. And I think that is something that has to be practiced, right? Because it's a muscle. It's not a test.
Have you read Tim Grover's book, Relentless?
I heard about it just yesterday. Somebody, said, well, how's this different than that? And I never heard of him.
Yeah, he taught some of the key basketball players, Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. And he just talks about this relentless discipline of practice after practice. So it becomes automatic when you're in the game situation. And we know the Navy SEALs do that. We know that hospitals practice and drill for certain procedures. So such as like, let's say a big road traffic accident or something. So, but a lot of sales reps practice in front of the customer. So they practice all of their mistakes in front of the customer.
Well, because it's a hard profession to practice, especially the complex sale.
Yes. But I think we all need this pre-performance.
We do. Of course we do. Because especially when you only have a couple a week, in the transaction, you get 10 a day.
Yes.
On the complex sale, you're lucky to get a good qualified meeting every other day.
Right.
So, right? And it's like, well, I've done it 1,000 times. Well, Kobe Bryant's thrown the ball a couple of million times and he still practices.
Yes.
Billy Joel, what does he do before he plays the piano? He's the piano man. He practices the piano.
Yes.
It's just, and he's done the same songs. I heard like Tommy Lee on a podcast and the Motley Crue, and he goes, these songs, I could do them when I'm sleeping and drunk. But he goes, I still practice.
Yes.
30 years he's been doing it.
And it's amazing. The elites are more disciplined and they do the basics and practice as if they're novices, whereas the novices behave as if they're elites.
Yeah, I mean,
and what really brought this home to me this year is the Olympics has been postponed till 2021. Now, I can guarantee you that the people that had a place at the Olympics will be still training 2 or 3 times a day, waiting for that opportunity when it comes. And they'll be even hungrier because it's been taken away from them. So I think salespeople need to adopt that similar mindset.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect with you?
Well, Brian, first of all, I just want to say I'm honored. I'm delighted to have had this opportunity today. And I was always told people believe what they read more than what they hear. So I thought I would just put that up for you. So There's my email address, michael@tenacitysalestraining.com. And you can also find us on LinkedIn, where we post sales tips and videos every week.
We sometimes think that we were either born with that enthusiasm, that optimism, that positive mental attitude, or can we create it? And I've been doing a lot of work on this, on myself, and communicating through office hours about mindset. Because mindset, it's a lot more important than I originally thought it was. Because I had a huge why when I got into sales. I was super competitive, full of ambition, hated to lose, loved to win, all of that stuff. And at times, as you go through your career, it changes. Let's say all of a sudden the money, you've got enough. Not enough, but enough to get by. And so they beat me this quarter. This thing or that thing. We have to build our mindset. We have to train it, much like we train a muscle. But what I'm learning about it is that we're training it with the wrong brain. We got to train that subconscious, that mammal brain of ours, and to condition it, not brainwash ourselves, but to build on it consistently every day, like a muscle, but different. You can't burn out your muscles, right? You got to rest. You got to recover. You got to do something a little different, keep it interesting, connect about it. So I encourage you to work on that and think how much better you would be. I talk a lot about that outward mindset. Now, that's kind of a way of thinking. It's not so much a motive. Are you using the words curious, interested, wanting to understand? Those things will help you get the other person talking, because nobody wants to hear about you. Everybody wants to talk about themselves. A little tip you can watch, and anytime you see an interview when the host, I do it too often too, starts talking too much, you can just see the other person kind of paced over. You notice that look, because that's the look to stop talking. And you got to catch yourself. Now I got to fill in a podcast. I got to share some knowledge here. But in sales, we kind of feel that too. So if you hear that pause or you sense that staring off, you got to talk about them. Flip a question back to them. Dig in a little bit deeper. Have the question that goes beyond the question. If you ask one question, how do you dig deeper? And then maybe a little bit deeper. Why? How'd you get here? How are you doing it now? Have you ever noticed? Dig in. Now, if you want to become great at sales, I know you don't. You're happy making what you want, and $500,000, $1 million a year sounds like a pipe dream. But if you want to do it, I know you're busy. All the taxes on that money, all those people that are going to want to ride in your Bentley. People don't want to fly commercial anymore. They're going to want to be in your jet. I know, you're busy. You don't have time for this. You want to learn what worked 15 years ago. Plenty of places to learn that. How about learning what works today when people aren't as visible? People are overloaded with enticing offers, compelling value propositions, insightful insights. How's it working? You want to find something smarter? You want to get your game to the next level? How do you do it? Yeah, practice is one way, but what do they call it? Constructive practice? Getting feedback, hearing other people doing it? Sounds like start the conversation, get the meeting with office hours, one-on-ones, as well as closing the complex sale. You don't want to close it, though, do you? You just want to work on it and then be told, wow, we're going to put it off until next year. You don't want to close it. All that commission? Oh, God. Somebody's going to want a big present or something if you get all that money. You're right. Stick where you are. Learn what worked 15 years ago and see if you can get time travel to go back to when it worked. I know, I'm being a little facetious here. Sorry, I just love talking about sales. Go to b2brevenue.com, check out the courses, sign up, get started. Waiting is costing you money. Okay, it's $365. It's about costing you about $2 a day to wait. No. Divide the income that you want from the income that you're at. That's the difference. And then divide by 365. That's what it's costing you per day. Can you stand that? Another day? Another day of wandering around the sales world? Where am I? What should I do? Do you know the game you're playing? I got to tell you, when I taught winning the complex sale in person, on-prem, I would go through the exercise. And I was like, okay, let's map out your sales process. People go, what do you mean? No, all the steps. Let's list them out. What do you mean? And I go, okay, what's the first? I'd have to pull it. They didn't know. Everyone knows the classics. disco call, presentation, demo, propose, negotiate, close. That if that works for you, you're not in the complex sale. That's a simple sale. When you go to a car dealer, yeah, you pick out the model, the color, the options, and then you sit down and you wrangle about the price. And they take your license and they say, okay, you got to talk to my manager. That's tactics. In the complex sale, if you don't have a strategy, if you don't know the game you're playing, the selling doesn't even start until they say we're going to do it later, because that's the default, because you're dealing with people who have zero budget authority. Until you get up to vice president, they can't buy anything. I was a vice president at a Fortune 50 company. I had a corporate credit card with no limit, but I knew I couldn't buy anything. And, the biggest thing I ever bought was a $2,500 dinner. I knew if I bought a product, I'd get killed. They'd be like, what are you doing spending the company's money? That's not to generate revenue. Now, I did this huge deal with AOL a long time ago. I was in the office with a founder, and he couldn't spend $5K without going higher up. $5K. This guy today is probably a billionaire. Back then, couldn't spend $5K. And it only gets worse when you get bigger companies, because all these people have to do you understand how to wrangle your way through it? I saw a post yesterday on LinkedIn where a guy I had on the podcast, he was a sales ops guy. He wasn't a salesperson. And his tip was to stay in touch with your mobilizer. I'm sorry, I've never seen mobilizer on anyone's business card. No company has the position of mobilizer. This is what people who don't know how to sell describe selling at. I'm sure what he meant was some version of your champion with authority, first line manager, VP, whoever it is. Now, are they mobilizing? Do they know who to mobilize? Did they go to Mobilizer University? No, they didn't. You better, because somebody should know how to do this. I probably taught winning the complex sale to a couple hundred companies. Not one knew the game that they were playing. They had some idea. They had been on treasure hunts before. None of them had a map or a process. You'd hear MedPick, and I'm like, that's elements of a sale. That's not a process. That's not how you prevent it from getting stuck. How do you prevent it from getting stuck with MedPick? Oh, you have a big enough why. Well, big enough why with some kid who doesn't have a budget doesn't matter. You have to understand how companies buy. Those things came out of companies that had market dominance, brand awareness, existing footprint within the company. That'll tell you, that's a forecasting tool. That tells you the likelihood of it closing. It doesn't tell you how to get a deal done. Look at your pipeline. Look at all those deals that are sitting there. I'm telling you, how many of them are going to be sitting there 6 months or a year from now, or slip, or get back, or shrink to the smallest level possible? That's the default. Let's change that. Let's bring the game to the next level. Learn what works today, not what worked 15 years ago when you were selling copiers or power tools or whatever it is some of these people have been doing. I saw one guy on YouTube. He sold for 2 years, and now he's an expert. And I'm like, okay, 1 year at a big company and 1 year at a small company. And I'm like, in 2 years, I've learned a lot in 2 years, but I learned a whole lot more in the years before. Probably was just setting up meetings and taking orders, selling upgrades and maintenance agreements. Let's learn how to sell the big deals. Let's hunt with the big dogs. We'll see you next time.